She looked at me like she already knew my answer, and in that silent moment, everything changed. The room was softly lit, bathed in the golden hues of early evening sunlight filtering through tall windows. A gentle hum of quiet conversations and the clink of glasses filled the air, but amidst it all, my attention was drawn to her. She stood near the far corner, a figure of calm confidence against the softly blurred backdrop. There was something about the way she carried herself, effortless grace wrapped in a quiet strength, that made her seem both a part of this space and yet somehow apart from it. Her hair caught the light in subtle waves, framing a face that bore the delicate marks of experience. Not the kind that aged her, but the kind that told stories, stories of laughter, loss, and a life fully lived. She wasn't flashy or trying to draw attention, yet when our eyes met, it was as though the world narrowed to that single point of contact. I caught her glance just a moment longer than I meant to, and in that brief connection, there was a knowing, a quiet certainty in her gaze that unsettled and intrigued me all at once. It was the kind of look that suggested she already understood something important, something I was still struggling to admit to myself. There was no hurry in her expression, no rush to speak or explain. Just the soft warmth of recognition, like a secret shared without words. I felt my pulse quicken, not from nerves, exactly, but from the sudden possibility that this moment, this encounter, was something more than chance. The air around us held subtle scents, the faint trace of her perfume, a delicate blend of vanilla and cedarwood, warm and inviting. It mingled with the cozy atmosphere of the room, the smell of aged wood and soft leather, the muted floral notes from a centerpiece on a nearby table. The sensory details wove together, grounding me in the moment and drawing me closer, even if I hadn't yet found the courage to move. For a heartbeat, I imagined what it would be like to cross the distance between us, to speak to her, to unravel the mystery in those eyes. But I hesitated, caught between the thrill of curiosity and the weight of uncertainty. What was it that she already knew? Was it something about me? About what I felt but couldn't say? Her lips curved in a gentle smile, just enough to acknowledge our silent exchange but not enough to dispel the tension simmering beneath. I noticed the way her fingers lightly touched the rim of her glass, a subtle gesture that seemed to anchor her in this moment as much as it held me captive. As I looked away, trying to steady my breathing, I realized this first glance was not the end, but the beginning. A quiet invitation to something unspoken, a slow, unfolding story that would change everything, if I dared to say yes. The days that followed were filled with moments I hadn't expected, brief, quiet intersections that felt less like coincidence and more like fate gently nudging us together. It started with the small places, the corner cafe where I went to escape the noise of the city, the dusty aisles of a bookstore I frequented, the park bench tucked beneath the golden canopy of autumn leaves. Each time, she was there, a calm presence in the background of my life, like a familiar melody just out of reach. Our eyes met again and again, sparking the same silent conversation we'd begun in that first glance. But now, there was something softer, something warmer in those looks, a hint of invitation wrapped in quiet restraint. I found myself looking forward to these unexpected encounters, even though the uncertainty tugged at me. Would she speak first? Would I find the courage? Each moment was charged with unspoken possibility, a delicate dance played out in the space between us. At the cafe, she ordered her usual, black coffee, no sugar, and when I reached for the same book she had picked up moments before, our hands brushed over its spine. The touch was fleeting but electric, sending a shiver up my arm and anchoring my scattered thoughts. She glanced at me then, a half-smile playing on her lips, as if she understood the storm of nerves and excitement swirling inside me. The world around us faded to muted tones, the soft rustle of pages turning, the distant murmur of other patrons, the warm scent of freshly brewed coffee weaving through the air. I noticed the way sunlight filtered through the large windows, casting a warm glow over her features, highlighting the graceful lines of her face and the calm depth of her eyes. There was a gentle hesitation in my movements, a cautiousness born from years of doubt and fear of getting too close too soon. But beneath it all, a quiet yearning pushed me forward, the desire to know her, to be near her, to break through the invisible barrier between curiosity and something more. Sometimes, as we crossed paths in the park, I caught her watching me from across the path, a soft smile touching her lips. The air was crisp with early autumn, carrying the scent of fallen leaves and earth, the sound of footsteps crunching beneath our feet. Our conversations were brief, simple greetings or shared comments about the weather, yet every word carried weight, every pause was pregnant with meaning. One afternoon, as she reached out to steady a loose scarf around her neck, our fingers touched again, just a fleeting contact, but enough to send a rush of warmth through me. She didn't pull away. Instead, she held my gaze steadily, that same knowing look lingering in her eyes. There was a quiet understanding between us, an unspoken agreement that this was no ordinary connection. Yet, neither of us rushed to name it or claim it. Instead, we let the tension simmer beneath surface politeness, a slow-burning ember glowing just beneath the skin, waiting for the right moment to catch flame. In these small, unexpected moments, something began to thaw inside me, the walls built from hesitation and past wounds softened by the gentle warmth of her presence. And I knew, with a certainty I couldn't yet fully grasp, that this slow dance was just the beginning of something much deeper. That evening felt different, quieter, warmer, like the world outside had softened, making space just for the two of us. We found ourselves settled in a small, cozy cafe, the kind of place where time slows down, and the hum of other conversations becomes a gentle background lull. The dim light flickered softly, casting gentle shadows that danced across her face, highlighting the delicate curve of her smile and the thoughtful depth in her eyes. She spoke slowly, her voice carrying the weight of years lived fully but also the softness of quiet reflection. Her stories weren't grand or dramatic, they were fragments of moments, a lost love, a friendship that endured, the bittersweet ache of choices made and roads not taken. As she spoke, I watched the subtle shifts in her expression, the way her brow furrowed slightly when recalling a hard lesson, the gentle light in her eyes when she spoke of hope. Listening, I felt my own walls start to crumble. There was no rush, no expectation, just a shared space where vulnerability was safe. I hesitated before offering my own truths, feeling the weight of my youth and inexperience in contrast to her seasoned grace. But as the minutes stretched on, I found myself opening up, my voice softer, more honest than I had allowed in a long time. Our hands rested near each other on the worn wooden table, and I became aware of the small details, the slight tremble in my fingers, the warmth radiating from her skin just inches away. I reached out almost instinctively, brushing a stray lock of hair from her cheek. The touch was light, almost hesitant, but it carried more meaning than words ever could. Her skin was warm beneath my fingertips, soft and real in a way that made the space between us feel smaller, more intimate. For a moment, her eyes closed, and I felt the quiet steadiness of her heartbeat through the thin fabric of her blouse. It was as if time itself paused, holding its breath along with me. When she looked back up, the vulnerability in her gaze matched my own. It was an unspoken invitation, an acknowledgement that beneath the surface, something deeper was stirring. We didn't need to say it aloud, the silence between us was full of meaning. The cafe around us continued to buzz softly, but inside this bubble of shared honesty, I felt a calm certainty growing. Here, in this moment, the distance between age and experience seemed to matter less. It was replaced by something warmer, a connection that went beyond years, beyond expectations, into the realm of something genuine and rare. As our conversation drifted toward lighter topics, I noticed the way her smile softened, how her eyes lingered on mine a little longer than before. The gentle brush of her hand as she reached for her cup felt like a secret message, a promise of more to come. In this quiet exchange, I realized that the first steps toward opening the heart were never loud or dramatic. They were small, deliberate moments of trust, shared breaths, light touches, and the courage to be seen fully, without pretense. And in that moment, I knew this was only the beginning of a journey neither of us could yet name, but both were eager to explore. The days after that evening grew more complicated in ways I hadn't expected. The quiet warmth we had shared seemed to hang in the air between us, but beneath it, a current of hesitation began to tug at my thoughts. I found myself caught between the pull of what I felt and the weight of what I feared, the unspoken social shadows that loomed large in the back of my mind. There was the age gap, undeniable and visible in the contrast between us. She moved through the world with the grace and confidence that only comes from years of experience, while I was still navigating the edges of my own uncertainties. I wondered how others would see us, whispered judgments, raised eyebrows, the quiet skepticism that comes from stepping outside what's expected. But it wasn't just the world outside, it was the quiet doubts inside me, the hesitation rooted in my own fears. Could I be enough for her? Was I ready to bear the complexities that came with loving someone who had already lived a life full of joys and scars? I grappled with the fragile threads of self-doubt, the fear that my youth might one day feel like a barrier instead of a bridge. She sensed this, I think. In the subtle shifts of her gaze, in the way her smile sometimes faltered, there was a vulnerability I hadn't seen before. One afternoon, as we walked side by side beneath the amber glow of an early autumn evening, she reached out and slipped her hand gently into mine. The touch was soft but sure, a quiet reassurance that spoke louder than any words could. The cool breeze rustled through the trees, carrying the scent of damp earth and fallen leaves. Our footsteps fell in rhythm on the cracked pavement, and in that simple act of holding hands, the world felt less daunting. But even then, a part of me hesitated, the old fears whispering in the quiet corners of my mind. We spoke little, but the silences between us were heavy with meaning. I wanted to reach out, to pull her closer, but something held me back, the knowledge that this connection was fragile, that rushing it could shatter the delicate balance we'd found. She leaned her head lightly against my shoulder for a moment, and I felt the steady beat of her heart against me, a steadying force in the storm of my doubts. There was no easy answer here, no simple path forward. Loving across the divide of years was a challenge neither of us had sought out but couldn't deny. Yet, in those moments of hesitation and vulnerability, I also saw the strength in her, a quiet bravery in choosing to walk this uncertain road with me. The tension between hope and fear stretched taut, but beneath it all, a thread of trust was weaving itself, connecting us more deeply than words ever could. We were learning to navigate not just each other's hearts but the world's gaze, slow, steady, and carefully, with the kind of tenderness that only comes from truly seeing one another. That evening, as we parted with a lingering glance, I knew the path ahead wouldn't be easy. But for the first time, I was willing to face it, with her, and whatever that future might hold. The night air was cool and still, wrapped around us like a soft, invisible cloak as we found ourselves alone beneath a sky scattered with stars. The world seemed to hold its breath, the usual noises of the city fading into the background as if to honor this fragile moment suspended in time. We sat close, the space between us narrowing without need for words. She looked at me, really looked, her eyes steady and full of a quiet certainty I had been searching for but hadn't dared to claim. It was the same look from the very first time our gazes met, but now it carried a depth that spoke of understanding, acceptance, and a patience born from knowing the answers long before they were spoken. I felt the tension that had built over weeks, the hesitation, the fears, the social shadows, begin to melt away in the warmth of her presence. There was no pressure here, no demand for immediate confession or grand declarations. Instead, it was a silent communion, a language spoken through glances, breaths, and the gentle closeness of two people who had learned to read each other without words. Her hand found mine with natural ease, fingers curling around mine in a gentle but unyielding grip. The touch was electric and grounding all at once, sending a rush of warmth through my veins and quieting the noise inside my head. I looked down at our entwined hands, then back up to meet her gaze, where I saw not just affection but a steadfast promise. Around us, the faint glow of distant streetlights cast a soft halo, illuminating the delicate curve of her smile as it slowly blossomed, one that reached her eyes and touched something deep within me. The cool night air mixed with the warmth radiating between us, creating a contrast that made the moment feel all the more alive, all the more real. We didn't speak, there was no need. The world had shrunk to this space, this breath, this touch. The answer that had hovered unspoken for so long was finally here, resting comfortably between us, acknowledged without a single syllable. In that quiet stillness, I understood something fundamental, that love doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it whispers through the simplest of gestures, a lingering look, a shared silence, a hand held just a moment longer. She leaned in slightly, the subtle movement closing the distance between us, and I felt the gentle warmth of her breath, the softness of her skin just inches from mine. It was a delicate promise, a bridge from hesitation to hope, from question to answer. The stars above seemed to shine a little brighter, as if celebrating the unspoken truth now illuminated between us. In her eyes, I found the courage I hadn't known I needed. In her touch, the quiet assurance that this was only the beginning of a journey we would take together. And as the night wrapped around us, I felt the weight of uncertainty lift, replaced by the steady, comforting rhythm of a silent understanding, one that said everything without a single word. The soft glow of the evening cast a warm, golden light over the room as we sat across from each other, the space between us charged with a new kind of electricity, one that had been building quietly, patiently, beneath layers of hesitation and silence. For a long moment, neither of us spoke, as if gathering courage from the stillness around us. Finally, I found the words, simple, honest, and trembling with vulnerability. "I've been trying to make sense of what I feel," I admitted, my voice low but steady. "And I realize it's more than just admiration or curiosity. It's something deeper. Something I haven't allowed myself to say before." She watched me with those steady, knowing eyes, eyes that seemed to see straight into the parts of me I kept hidden from the world. There was no judgment there, only warmth and an invitation to be fully seen, fully accepted. Unscared, I confessed, the truth spilling out like a fragile thread. Scared of what this means, scared of the unknown. But I can't deny that I want this, want you, in a way that feels real and right. Her lips curved into a gentle, reassuring smile, and she reached across the table, her hand covering mine with a tender firmness that steadied my racing heart. "I've felt it too," she said softly. More than I expected, more than I allowed myself to hope. And yes, there are fears that come with anything truly worth holding on to. But I'm willing to face them, if you are. The room seemed to grow quieter still, the hum of the outside world falling away until it was just the two of us, two souls standing at the edge of something fragile and beautiful. Her touch was warm against my skin, a lifeline in the sea of uncertainty. I leaned in slightly, the vulnerability in her gaze matching my own. I don't know what the future holds, I whispered. But I want to find out, with you. She nodded, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears and quiet joy. Then let's take this one step at a time. Together. In that moment, the barriers we'd built around our hearts began to crumble, replaced by a tender openness that felt like coming home. It wasn't about grand gestures or rushed promises, it was about the small, everyday choices to show up for each other, to listen, to understand, and to love without reservation. Her cheek brushed against mine as she reached up, the soft contact sending a gentle thrill through me. I felt the steady beat of her heart against my own, a quiet symphony of shared hope and newfound trust. We stayed like that for a while, simply holding the space between us, no words needed, just the comforting presence of two people who had chosen to open their hearts despite the risks. And as the night deepened, I knew that this confession wasn't an ending, but a beginning, a warm, fragile promise that whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them side by side. The morning sun filtered gently through the curtains, casting a soft, golden light across the room. It was a new day, not just in the calendar, but in the rhythm of our lives. The hesitations and doubts that had once held us back now felt like distant memories, replaced by a steady, quiet confidence that came from truly knowing and accepting each other. We moved through the world side by side, a natural rhythm settling between us like a familiar song. There was no need for grand declarations or dramatic gestures, our connection was built on small moments of tenderness, shared laughter, and the easy comfort of presence. Whether walking down bustling city streets or sitting quietly in a cafe corner, there was a soft electricity in the way our hands found each other, fingers intertwining with effortless ease. It was in the gentle brush of her hair from my forehead, the way her laughter warmed the air around us, the subtle glances exchanged that spoke volumes without a word. Sometimes we met friends, sometimes it was just the two of us. Each encounter felt natural, unforced, a testament to the respect and understanding that had grown between us. The age gap that once felt like a barrier now simply a part of our story, woven into the fabric of a relationship defined by depth rather than appearances. There were moments, of course, when old doubts crept in, whispers of, what if, or, why us, but we faced them together, turning to each other for strength rather than letting fear take hold. The world outside might still have its judgments, but inside the bubble we created, there was only acceptance and warmth. I noticed the way she looked at me sometimes, the soft smile, the eyes that seemed to see through to my very soul. And I found myself doing the same, cherishing every quiet second we shared. It wasn't about changing each other, but about embracing all the pieces, past and present, that made us who we were. One afternoon, as we strolled through a park bathed in late afternoon light, her hand slipped into mine with that familiar ease. We paused beneath a tree, the leaves casting dappled shadows across her face. She turned to me, her smile gentle and sure, and in that moment, I felt the full weight of everything we'd come through, the doubts, the fears, the slow, beautiful unfolding of something rare and true. There's nowhere else I'd rather be, she whispered, her voice soft but full of conviction. Neither would I replied, squeezing her hand gently. We stood there for a while, just two people anchored in the present, ready to face whatever came next together. There was no need to rush, no pressure to define what the future held. It was enough to know that we had found something worth holding on to, something patient, kind, and real. As the sun dipped lower, casting the world in a warm glow, I realized this wasn't just a happy ending. It was a beginning, a promise to walk forward hand in hand, grounded in love, respect, and the quiet joy of being truly seen. And with that, the story we had started together continued, whole, hopeful, and beautifully ours.